guys, we have 1 week until the AP Stats test, and so that your brain doesn't go on summer mode quite yet, I'm going to be sending you a 2 to 3 minute review video every single day. So I hope you kind of will take a few minutes and watch this and think about what's coming up. Thanks. Look at 3 AP multiple choice questions to kind of review this concept of experimental design and then a little bit of bias. So a couple of things to remind you of before I show you the first question. Randomized block design is when you are dividing into subgroups and what you're wanting to do is create less variability in the subgroups. So for example, you might split into males and females because there's less variability in gender, right? And then you have matched pairs design, which is really similar to block. It is a specialized blocking design, but it's when you're actually pairing like maybe 2 females of the same age and giving one the treatment and one not the treatment. So that's kind of the matched pairs thing. And then remember, an observational study is when there's no treatment being applied. Good luck. Had a chance to consider the answer now, be a good time to pause and rewind and go back and read the question. I hope you answered A. It was completely randomized. No blocking was done. There was no grouping, no pairing. Just here's a towel, goes in the washing machine. Obviously, there was treatment applied. It can't be observational. So I hope that helps. Let's look at a little bit of bias. So types of bias. So you want to remember that a good sample represents your population. So you're looking for anything that could cause it to be different than the population. So one of the ways that it could be different from the population is for you to have undercoverage bias, which often happens when you have a convenient sample. And so you have got some part of the population that is inadequately represented. And then you've got non-response bias, which is when part of your sample is unwilling or unable to respond. For example, think about like a mail-out survey or like something that you would tear out of a magazine and answer and mail back. And then you've got response bias. Response bias is when people tend to respond incorrectly or falsely, sometimes or often because the questioning is maybe poor or the person doing the questioning is sort of leading them to an answer. And then you've got voluntary response bias, which is when participants self-select. So for example, maybe call into a radio station or something like that. And so oftentimes you've got over-representation of emotions because the only people that are going to call in are people who have strong emotions about whatever that topic is, whether they agree or disagree. Remember this, if this were an open response question asking about bias, you wouldn't just want to name the bias or explain the bias. You would also want to talk about the direction the bias would cause. Like what would happen in your sample because of that bias. Okay, good luck. If you didn't have time to fully read the question, rewind, pause, read the question, get an answer. The answer is E. Remember, response bias is when you've got questions that are maybe poorly worded or you're not getting true, accurate feedback from your participants. So you probably need to fix something in the wording or the way you're asking questions. Okay, hang on just a second for the next topic. Last one, that was kind of a long one, so you probably do want to rewind and pause if you haven't done that yet. The answer is going to be B, and I think this one was worded a little tricky with all the words. There's some that you could easily throw out. For example, the thing about children under the age of 18, they very obviously covered that. The one that I thought was maybe a little bit tricky was what if there's more than one adult living in that household? And my answer to that is that adult is also going to have that phone number. So it doesn't ever say that it won't repeat phone numbers, so they could potentially still reach that adult just in case. So again, your answer in this one is B, which is registered voters with unlisted telephone numbers may be underrepresented in the sample. And we talked a lot about unlisted numbers because that really does cause quite a big problem. Okay, I hope this kind of refreshed you on sampling and bias, and I'll see you tomorrow for the next installment.